working on maritime history. She traveled a lot. She went to Zanzibar and many places. And she studied the relationship, the cultural transfer between India and particularly this place of India, Gujarat, and places across the Indian Ocean. Dr. Saxena is the head of the History Department of Baroda. She has done extensive studies on urban history. She has worked on many places, many cities of Gujarat, and that is very important to bring into the notice because urban history needs more and more specialists, not only in the field of history but from various fields to work on it and understand the development of our cities. And I guess this would also help not only to understand our identity but to figure out how we could do something for our cities today. So please, Mr.
Good evening, everybody. Sarah has told you something about me. I would just like to put it that way that I started my MPhil and doctoral dissertation on urban history. And initially I started looking into the imperial cities for the medieval period. By training I am a medievalist. And at the MPhil level I try to understand the imperial cities and the provincial capitals. At that stage I realized that the small urban centers are not studied at all. So just I try to look into how they are evolving. So from a village to a kasbah, kasbah to a balda, and balda to a shehr. I would be using the terms which are generally used in Persian context because I use Persian sources. And today I will be talking about some of these sources here as well. And my doctoral dissertation took me into the present Haryana territory, the then Mughal Suba of Agra and Delhi. And my job brought me to the Gujarat. So I just started, I was through with my doctoral dissertation. I just thought that how the model which I had developed for Haryana, will it be working for Gujarat or not? Using the same kind of Persian sources, which I would be referring and using for Ahmedabad as well, and Ahmedabad being the provincial capital. But I am applying the same model which I had applied for Haryana, or for example doing things on Champane or Daboi, or say for Bharuch in the early phase of the medieval period, say talking about the Delhi Sultanate period. Okay, today we would be talking about Ahmedabad, the making of the ports in Ahmedabad. When I had started, I was looking into the agrarian potentiality and non-agrarian aspects which are responsible for the growth of an urban center. Right? If we see Ahmedabad, right, and if all of us are well aware about it, how Ahmedabad had evolved from Aswal, if we rely on the talks what Professor Rawat has told, he must have gone into the various spaces, like before the period 1411 when Ahmedabad is coming. Right? If we see that already there was a pattern of settlements, urban settlements, and if we actually go into some of the authentic studies which we can always discuss, that the model which had evolved in the 15th century was already there. One can take care of Patan. Patan was the earlier capital and the shift was in the Aswal region, and finally Ahmad Shah is coming with Ahmedabad. Right? And how this had come, one has to therefore look into the imperial Delhi. Say for example, when you look for Delhi which is coming into the Mehrauli complex, or which is moving towards the Nizamuddin area, then moving further to the Firoz Shah Kotla, and this is how you see 7 Delhis. The similar kind of pattern you will find that an urban center is emerging in Delhi, or in case of Daulatabad, or even the later cities of the Aurangabad. And our Ahmedabad lies somewhere here. Right. Moving on to the second slide. This I draw upon from the work of a renowned architect. Right? The Ahmedabad is shown, and the yellow portion actually shows the old fort city. And we will be talking about it, how it had expanded. This is the Muzaffarite dynasty, where you see the span or the extension is there. Moving out to the next, the expansion in 1573, where Akbar is getting hold of, and cities more organized, more economically stable. And this is when the Marathas had come. And here you see that the residential quarters are evolving, planned residential quarters are evolving. The work by the architects and urban architects, urban historians that had carried out, they've seen how the planning was done. The road was in the center. On the both sides, you were having the poles, the gates of the poles, and other things are there. We can always go into these a little later. And this is how you see the Britishers are taking over. So I have shown you 5 maps. The territory which is there, which we understand Ahmedabad today, and then we go back. Now coming on to the Persian sources, I am starting very early. Say for example 18th century, 1763 is the date for Mirat-e-Ahmadi. Right? One can take it as a gazetteer of the 18th century, where you will find that all details regarding the Gujarat is given. There is a supplement of Mirat-e-Ahmadi, which is called as Khatima, which is providing us the statistics. The statistical figure where you are having the land revenue estimates, where you are having the number of villages, which the earlier Persian documents are not having. One can always rely on 1560-95 document Aini-Akbari, where you are having the Arazi statistics and similar kind of revenue figures, similar kind of caste structures are there, infantry details are there, cavalry details are there. So these two become two important laws, and in between the historian, the medievalists look upon Char Gulshan or Khalasat-e-Tariq and these kind of sources. And here you see that a vague description of the city of Ahmedabad is mentioned because it is a Suba capital, that is one. It was the capital of the Gujarat Sultans, who are very well connected with the Tughlaqs. Because if you see that how the Muzaffar Shah dynasty is formed, the connect is with the Haryana region. Mirat-e-Sikandri speaks of that, and Firoz Shah Tughlaq is in Hisar-e-Firoza, which is the district headquarter in Haryana, a very well known district these days, right? A progressive region of the Haryana region, and it is here that Firoz Shah Tughlaq dug the 2 canals, what you call as Western Jamuna Canal. The connection is there. They are coming here, they are laying down, Muzaffar Shah and Ahmad Shah is coming up with the capital. There are many reasons why he is coming with the capital. It is the internal family dispute that he is shifting from that region, and this Ahmedabad is coming. So we are having this kind of information with us. Right? Say for example, Abul Fazl. It is a noble city in a high state of prosperity. For the pleasantness of its climate and its display of the choicest production of the whole globe, it is almost unrivaled. The city then had 84 wards and 1,000 mosques. And this is our detail of 1595. One of our speakers had spoken on, had talked about 15th century Ahmedabad. The 16th century Ahmedabad is missing, right? And this can be taken as well documented. Why? Because if you see another Persian chronicle, Tabqat-e-Akbari of Nizamuddin Ahmad, right? There you are getting more details. You are not getting only details of the Puras, their names, and who are actually responsible for the establishment of these Puras. Before coming to the post, I would like to share this with you that if you go into the Persian terminology, right, and you will find Puras are permanent structures. Say for example, a citadel has come, a fortified region has come, the nobility will definitely like to have the similar kind of structure which the imperial authority is having, but at the same time did not want it to be very near to the imperial authority and just want to go far away. Say for example, I place before you the case of family who writes this book, Towns and Cities in Mughal India. Right? Say for example, the Jamindar of Jagdishpur. He becomes very, very potential in the 18th century and he lays down the Jagdishpur. And this area is very near to the Jami Mosque. So this kind of pattern is coming in Ahmedabad. This you can see even in Surat. This you can see in Aurangabad, in other imperial capitals or provincial capitals. So nobility is responsible for the establishment. But okay, fine, nobility is important. But what about the Mahajans? And this Mahajans become very important because amongst the Mahajans, there are institutions which are the guilds, the merchant guilds. Then there are the guilds of the artisans also, because they are very important community. They are also establishing the khirkis, the khachas and other. And in fact, the poles, when the poles is made and or the pole is extended, we will be going into these poles. These kind of terms are coming, and extension of an urban settlement is taking place. And our Persian sources are speaking in that way. Moving on to another statement coming from Aine Akbari, it states that Sarkar of Ahmedabad, see the Mughal Pasha is there, then 12 subas or 14 or 15 subas or 17 subas is there. Then you are having Suba Gujarat, or it is also called as Suba Ahmedabad if you have read Kamesh Harriet's book. Then the Sarkar of Ahmedabad, which is having 28 fiscal units from where the revenue is generated, and each is having a headquarter. Right? So, but if you actually go into the details of Tabqat-e-Akbari, you can see that they are actually the Puras. Because one has to really go into the minutest details of this. So if you are able to lay down the names of these 28 Mahals, which are actually available to us from Aine Akbari, as well as Mirat-e-Ahmadi, as well as Char Gulshan. So we are having three very important sources. And more importantly, if we look into the Bengal documents, these are reappearing, and Khulasat Tariq of Sujan Rai is also mentioning this name. And when we later on we see today that the name of these poles, right, there is a constant continuous documentation. The only thing is that we need to effort, we need to establish that how old they are. And if you talk to the people who are surviving, who are the owners, they will say, they will tell you that we had been living here, or this had been our property for 12 generations. The only thing is that the structure has changed. The space has been there, or it has been sold, one, it has been mortgaged, and the Khatpatra documents which I would be talking to you, they are testimony to it. Then we are getting much more references which I don't think are necessary at this moment. We can always Then, at the same time, for the 17th century, I will be bringing in 4 European travelers. John Jordan, the General of John Jordan, he was the first Englishman to visit Ahmedabad on the behalf of East India Company in 1611. And he says, it is a principal city of Gujarat where there is a viceroy for the Mughal. That city is one of the fairest cities in all the India, both for building and strength, and also for beauty, and situated in a pleasant soil, and has much trade by reason of much clothing which is made within the city. When it is talked of climate, one, and when it is talked of agrarian potentiality, it is actually documenting that it was in cotton area. So what is happening? That cotton area is there, merchants are coming, and also the artisans are coming. And if you look into the kind of commercial activities of the Mahajans, the petty traders, they are doing it. The commodity is being taken on Surat-Agra axis, because 17th century is the century for Surat city. Right? And Ahmedabad had lost ground because the cotton is being taken to Surat, and later on this cotton is being taken to Bombay. Right? But the inhabitants of these posts or these residential quarters, they are still there, their skills are there. And their skills are maintained, but at the same time, they are having their own spaces. The same kind of case, the way the Pulicat in the Coromandel Coast is having. If you read Radhika Session, you will find the similar kind of tendency. So what is emerging? A pattern is emerging, whether it is an inland urban center or whether it is a coastal urban center, the tendencies are the same. Then we have Nicholas Downtown, who commented in the same way for Ahmedabad. Right? He records that it was a popular city, metropolis of all those parts of Gujarat, famous for nobility and gentry, also for rich trade in variety indigo. Because Sarthing is a place where best quality indigo is obtained, and in fact it is brought in Ahmedabad, and dissemination of indigo is taking place. The whole lot of Dutch records or East English factory records clearly says about it, and you can have more voluminous information in other reports also. Then you are finding the English, Dutch, Portuguese, Jews, Armenians, Arabians, Medes, Persian, Turks, Tartarians, and all kind of people. So it becomes a melting pot, and where these people are staying. Like if you read BRICS, the cities of Gujar Rashtra, right? That at some places when these European travelers are coming, in which quarter they are staying, or sometimes they are taken as the guest of the Nagar Seth or the other business commercial community. That these kind of references are also available to us. I am not bringing in this, but interestingly we are having this kind of reference, and Ahmedabad is not an exception. Then Mandelslo and Manujji, they talk that with the growing of the time, with having better administration under Mughals, with looking into the more municipal, because Rishi was telling about the bylaws, the structure should not go high. So 3 or 4 storied structure are referred to. This I had found in the late 18th and 19th century sources for Mundra also, that a building beyond 4 stories was not permitted. You will find very rare buildings of 4 stories. You will find more of 2 stories and 3 stories if you are moving around Mundra. Right? And this is facing the coast. This is towards the port, and the road is known as the Bandar Road. If you go to Bhavnagar, you will find the similar kind of thing. Right? Similarly, if you move into the Dholka region, there also you will find some poles. Right? So similar kind of thing is there. So Manujji also in the late 17th century and early 18th century records of that. So finally what we see is that we are having these heritage aspect, which in fact is available on the heritage site of the Ahmedabad. This documentation is already done, so this is not my contribution. These are the poles which I have gathered the names. Say for example, Aka Seth Kuani Pole. Right? Now if we literally translate it, it was Aka Seth's Kuan, and where the well of Aka Seth was there, and later on this was evolved as a residential quarter. Right? It is very difficult that when Aka Seth had actually been, it is really difficult to document this kind of thing. Right? Simply Amlini Pole, Amrut Lalni Pole, Arjun Lalni Khadki. So these kind of names are appearing, and which is the latest one. I have downloaded it from Wikipedia. Okay. My concern is not about the names. I am moving on to the 159 names of the poles I have located. I am referring to these Khatpatras. These are the documents written in Persian as well as Gujarati Modi. Modi is an old language, right? And here you see the owner of the property name is there. These are the sale deeds. These are semi-legal documents where the name of the imperial authorities are there, the steps are there, the Nagar Seth name is there, the person who is an intermediary before the deal, his name is there, who is selling, who is purchasing in there, and more importantly, the map of that pole is there. So this is interesting. So this may belong to a Mahajan, this may belong to a Jain, this may belong to a Muslim, this may belong to a carpenter, this may belong to a weaver, because in some cases they are also available. Now the issue is that where these Khatpatras are. These Khatpatras are very much in Ahmedabad. In fact, they were acquired, they were collected from variety of people, and they are lying in BJ Institute of Learning and Research. Right? So far, not many scholars had worked on it. Some of the Khatpatras are in our possession at Baroda History Department also. These are regarding the lake, Sureshwar Desai's lake, and in fact the whole of the Mangal Bazar area and a portion of Raupura area is also documented over here. So the size of the pole is there, the owner pole there. If the property is being inherited, right, even we get mentioned that this property is given or inherited by the daughters also, which is an exception, which generally did not happen. But these Khatpatras, they are revealing us this kind of information. I would like to share with you that some documentation of these Khatpatras was done, and the Khatpatras which had been dated and are available, they are as early as 1482 AD. And these documents had been named. Document number 98, which is in Persian. Then we have document for 1616, 1627, 1642, 56, 1660, 63, 73, 3 documents for the year 77, then 78, 85, 86, 87, 88, 4 documents for 88, 96, 98, and many more documents in ample number are available for the 18th century starting from the year 1702 till 1799. Then we have documents from 1801 to 1990. If I go by the preliminary survey, 3 or 4 documents do tell us about the resale of the property. So one can actually, by going through the list of the polls, like if we actually work it out, we can say originally the poll was, if we are able to locate the 19th century poll from the Khatpatras, and we are on 4 or 5 occasions, the resale deeds are available to us, and these documents are well preserved in DGA Institute. So one authentication for the poll can be done, because I am not a person who would be going and conserving and preserving, right? But definitely this will authenticate the work done by a preservationist or conservationist. That is one. The second thing is that the material regarding the construction of these polls. Again, coming back to Aine Akbari and Mirate Ahmadi, right, and looking into the various Persian sources, I did try to look at how the mining was done, how the stone was squared. See, this is the region Ahmedabad, you are not having stone available. Maybe local stone, if there was an isolated hillock was there, maybe it has been quarried. Most of the time the stone was quarried from the Saurashtra region, or it was coming from South Rajasthan. Right. So what you see is that right from the time of Aswal, that you are not finding the construction in stone. When the Sultanate is established, I am referring to the Gujarat Sultan, and she had spoken on what stone have to tell. I don't know that argument what Sarah has built up, but I am taking the approach of Elizabeth Lembon, who looks into that most of the built material was timber and brick. So if you actually move around the Dholka mosque, you see that the brick had been used, because the brick can be easily made. Right? Even if you go to Champaner, Pavagadh Champaner city complex, on the foothill, or if you go on the high, you will find the brick has been used. Right? That is one. And most of the time the timber has been used. The timber was brought from the Malabar coast, and it was easy to bring it because of the coastal trade. And later on we see the ornation, that ornamentation. So main ornamentation had been in wood, and later on this has been supplemented on the stone also. And if you go to Mundra, you will find both of them. You see the car door and you see the stone carving. But if you go to Zanzibar, you will find stone carving is not there, only timber carving on wood is there. So see what here I am saying is that when an urban settlement appears, or the quarters of the urban settlement appears, the people, whatever capital they are having with them, they see the climate, they see the availability of the resources, and finally they construct their house. Coming to the poles, see the Ahmedabad was a place where commercial community was there, the artisan community was there, and they preferred to have their houses and the shops together. See, if you go into the Mahajan Wadis, right, you will find that once you are moving into the pole, you are having a gate, then open space where the community is coming. Then the main person house is there, but he will have 3 or 4 quarters. One meant that yes, he can congregate with the strangers. Then there is a portion where the less stranger people will there, and in the 4th section they were keeping their ladies, so that the strangers do not have a glimpse of the ladies. So this is how other poles were made. Similarly, the lanes were drawn. Right? If you see the bent curves which are coming, I have shown you this. This is there. So this kind of thing. So it's not easy. The gates are not so big. It's not easy to have a glimpse of the inner housing. At the most, you can have the verandas glimpse, or you can have the central wall, what you call as Diwan Khana. And this kind of concept you can see at Fatehpur Sikri also. And the structures are open. right? But the moment you move into the palace, you will find that the houses are becoming, or the gates of the houses are becoming narrower, or they are on the adjacent side. So the house is there, the shop is there. I have find the similar kind of thing, the similar kind of lane structure in Zanzibar. Right, particularly when I was moving in, where the Khojas, the Bhatiyas, the Memons, they were having their residential quarters. With this I stop because we can always go into the technicalities of the Khatpatras. Any question or any question?
Who actually drafts the Khatpatras? Is it a legal person who does it?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, because this is how, see what happens in the imperial frame, right? Whether it is Delhi Sultanate or it is the Mughals, or when the Delhi Sultans are reaching out to the rulers in the Gujarat, or after 1573, Akbar is reaching out, right? See, there is a hierarchy of structure. The emperor is there, the Subedar is there, and over the Subedar you will find reaching out to the Kanun codes. So who is, say for example in today's context, if a sale deed is carried out, it will be on a stamp paper. So the stamp comes from the imperiality. There is a clerk who is called as Kanungo. He is writing it. The evidences are needed. So both the parties, they will bring in two evidences for them, one from the seller side, one from the purchaser side. The imperial authorities would be there, and if it is a larger deed, then you see the Nagar, it will be happening in the presence of the Nagar Seth. In most of the Khatpatras, in case we had found for the Ahmedabad, the Nagar Seth, Lalchand Kushalchand name is there. This is for 17th century, because he had survived for a span of 67 or 68 years. Right? So I think that in around 12 Khatpatras which are there with the BJ Institute, and I have not worked on them. It's just a preliminary survey which on 2 occasions I could see, and I am looking for that in future I can do that, and in fact it would be very interesting. Right? So this kind of that. So stamp is there. Then what was happening after doing it in Persian? Right? Throughout the historical period, you see when I am talking in reference to the imperial Mughals, right? They were written in the indigenous language also. And this is the Gujarati Mughal. As I said for Sureshwar, that we are having the Khatpatras on a white cloth, written in black ink. That ink is still sharp. It has not faded at all. They can be rolled. They are around 2 meters, sometimes 2 meters long, and 2 meters is a long one. So they have all the details. Then they will have the map, like such kind of structures, this kind of structure, the quarter is there, the nearby quarter details are there. Then all the signatures of the people are there. Then when the sale is being made, right, if the original owner is having 4 sons and 1 daughter, and this applies for the case of Suresh this side, right, the portion of that pole, right, and this is near the Mangal Bazar area, it is given to the daughter also. Okay, so this shows the tradition that in Gujarat the property was inherited by the daughter also. Like if I go and look into the details of these Khatpatras, quite possible for the poles or for the khachas or for the kharkis where the sale deeds are available, we may find these kind of social legal relationships as.
So today these poles which exist in Ahmedabad today, they are owned by the same legendary people?
See, because poles are undergoing changes because they have been brought down. The Euro India project, which Sarah would be knowing, when they had actually carried out a survey of the southern part of the poles in the Bhadra locality, right? There they had found that they have really undergone changes, because what is happening, they are taking out the brick structure, the wooden carving and all, and they are being sold off, and then you are finding that modern kind of things are coming. Many of them had been brought down just to come up with the flat thing, and that's the reason, in fact, after 1990s or in 2000, that the municipal Devashish was measured. So they started going for preservation and conservation.
Okay, now they are preserved, that means they cannot be brought, right?
Because ASI is taking care of many locals. In one of the slides I showed you that the ASI has found that there are 12 original gates and all. So they are preserving it. But same is not the situation for the case of Mundra. Mundra is a W45 city. It is also having the poles, the khachas, the wadis, the vadas. So it depends on the text. The term is coming from the local language, right? And these terms are available both in Persian as well as Gujarati and Urdu documents. The same you will find for the Dakkani Mori in case of Aurangabad, or if you go to Golconda and all. So you will have the similar kind of pattern. So in order to understand the poles, the nature of the poles, the caste, the subcaste, the professional categories, right? And many a times what is happening, their profession is identifying their caste. Say for example, she was referring to the jhalas, right? Jhalas are actually banyas, right? So these jhalas had come from southern Rajasthan, and when they came and they started their business, they are Marwadis therefore. So when they established these poles, they have named these poles as so and so jhala. So they have retained the name of the original village, right? So the list which I had provided to you, right? Say for example, Limda Sheri, just Limda Sheri, Lakhiani pole, right? So who is Lakhia, right? Either it is a professional category. Every time an individual is not responsible. Say for example, number 50, Jada Bhagatni pole, right? Then why he is called as Bhagat? Okay, and I am just referring to the poles which are in the 45 area. And later on what had happened, within the puras, these are the poles. Within the poles there are khadkis and the khachas, right? And the khadkis and khachas, they are under the control of the panch, right? And panch is a guild of artisans. Right? And if you go by the Persian terminology, you can understand it. Otherwise, as an architect, you are free to understand the way you want. I have my limitations.
So I just wanted to know, you're saying that that there's a continuum between the Persian and this Gujarat folks. Does that mean that even in Persia also they had these kind of folks?
Yes, it's a very interesting question.
That is something that's really amazing, because that's always.
That's the reason say one has to see the towns in West Asia.
I see. Yes. They also have it.
Yeah, if you just let's be in touch with each other. Just say for example, when in Africa the Gujaratis are going, they are taking. This is the case which I myself had seen roaming around in the Stone Town. And Zanzibar is an island, and the Stone Town is one. The Ponda region is one. You go to Prison Island, you go to the Mombasa, you will have the similar kind of feel what you are having in Ahmedabad or in Rajkot, or per se for Surendranagar. If you move around into the old city area, the streets are the same. On the street, on the ground floor, you will be having the shop, right? Then there will be a staircase, and they would be living on the first floor. If the person is not rich, he will be having a single. And this kind of a structure is there. But if you go to West Asia, you will have that. And you can have a similar kind of museum in Dubai. Right? They had come with, if you are going to Dubai, there is a museum. Right? And they had brought in these streets, the houses, and all showing in a very interactive way. So the urban pattern is not different in the medieval century. It's not. So therefore, when I showed you 5 maps, the 1411, where you will find the less number of inhabitants, the citadel is there, and then you will find the residential pattern. But by 1573 onwards, in the 16th century and the 17th century, you see the extension. More Purans are coming, and this one can document with the help of Aini Akbari. You can have more detailed account in Tabqat-e Akbari. The largest details are available in the Khatima of Mirat-e Ahmadi, and one more manuscript which is available on which Mirat-e Ahmadi supplement is written, which was located by Professor Jayadeh Desai. So it gives you more information on the poles, puras, khachas, khadkis, and so on. And these terms become much more popular with some modification or the impact of the Gujarati language in the 19th century. So if you see the list, right, the list is increasing in the 19th century, and I have provided you a list of 159 poles. Like maybe when you are physically moving, you may find more members. I'm not sure, but I have the list of this. That there has to be a Parsi Wada, then within the Parsi Wada you will have a pole, a khacha, because they were employing their own artisans. They were having their own carpenter. And as you see that patronizing pattern is there with the imperial authority, with the Nagar Seth, the Seths, the Mahajans, right, because they were having their own guilds. And why these poles were made? Right? It's not about that they are creating the caste isolation. It's not that. See, it's creating a small, a suburban locality for itself. That is one. So they can show their strength, right? They are actually very powerful because they are making intervention when the coming of the Britishers, right? They are making interventions. They are actually influencing the local politics. When imperial authority is declining after 1707, you see that the Khatpatras number is increasing. See, I could see the Khatpatras available for Ahmedabad during the reign of Bahadur Shah first, Farooq Shah, then Muhammad Shah Rangeela, more in number. So as I said that 90 Khatpatras are there in collection with the BJ Institute. Right. Around 26 or 27 do belong to the later Mughal period. The one which we are having has the signature of Aurangzeb, the seal of Aurangzeb which is there in our department. So they become very vital source for understanding urban planning, understanding the inhabitants of these areas, right? And maybe if a bigger project is carried out, we can in fact find the continuum between the generation when they say that we have lived in this area for 12th generation or 13th generation, which is really surprising. But this is a fact that when you look into these documents, you can see, say for example in Mundra, I had found a house which is dated 1635. But this could happen only on the basis of these documents. The house is preserved. If you go to Mundra, right, you can see these houses. I can show you, because I had documented it, I can show you that now they had painted in bright blue, written that this house was constructed in circa 1635 AD. But when I was in Zanzibar and documenting, because the car doors are already documented, it was a big project, right? The door is I think that it is 1571 or so. The Mombasa door where German consulate was, it was at the time of the Tharya Topan in the 19th century. So this kind of tradition had existed in Gujarat. This is just interesting.
No, but also another thing I would like to ask you, this is kind of for us to, okay, this pole in India, is it only confined to Gujarat or on the western side, or is it also?
See, pole, they are using the term pole, right? Pole means a residential quarter, okay. But you will find the similar kind of planning in Punjab. I can cite the case of Jhajjar, because when I did my doctoral dissertation, I had found the same kind of thing, that if you move into the town of Jhajjar, which is in Haryana, you have to, maybe you have heard of Rohtak, not very far from Rohtak, right? If you go there, you will find that narrow lanes are there. Then they are taking you to the Havelis. A single story Haveli or 2-story Haveli is there, right? But there is a difference in Punjab and Gujarat. As Punjab is near to the northwest provinces, invasions are there. So the lanes are very narrow. You can actually drive ride your bicycle, right? But here in Ahmedabad or in Mundra or Mandavi, at least 2 rickshaws can go, or a Maruti can go. In Jhajjar that can't go. But they are having a different term. The term mohalla is more applicable for North India. The poles are applicable for Gujarat region. If you go into the Rewari, because I have also documented Rewari, there also you will find the term mohalla is available, right? So this is like the terms vary. If you go into North Rajasthan or East Rajasthan, you are having simply different terms for the urban settlement. Say for example, here we are having Balda. In case of Gujarat, there we are having the term Tappa, right? And then if you look into the indigenous sources for the 18th century, the localities are named in a different way. But definitely who is the founder or its connection is in Fusco, and then the term is there. So here we find Vada, Wadi, Khacha, Khadki, right? So when I had come to Gujarat, these terms were entirely new, right? And if you actually look into the work by Narayani Gupta, right, he has come up with a glossary for the terms for northern India. So far no historian or no scholar had worked on the term, urban terms for the Western India region. The Western India is different. Similarly, if you see the Coromandel or the Malabar region, the terms are different. But the settlement pattern more or less remains the same. It may be in a square, it may be in circle, in octagonal style where you will have a big space where all are meeting, or the way Ahmedabad is having it is rectangular, right? Divided, there you are having a broad street, then you are having the Coles Gate, and then you are having the square quarters. This kind of pattern had actually emerged.
In Bangalore also, if you go into the inner city, those roads, no? They are half. They are half of the codes. I was really shocked, you know, because I was.
See, in Calcutta,
maximum rickshaw and auto rickshaw is the maximum.
This is for security reasons.
Maximum
Security, and at that time you were not having motorbikes and cars. So people were just moving from one to other.
Not this much.
So and another thing is that if there is an emergency, they can quickly move on from one house to the other house. If in case of Jajjar, the children used to jump from one roof to the other roof. Like this was the pattern in my native town also.
That was most common.
So this is a very common thing. I cannot say anything about Bangalore, but for Calcutta I can say when the Marwadi states, they had shifted, or the Gujarati states, or in per se in case of Hyderabad, the fortified area, you will find a similar kind of settlement patterns. Right? And I am not aware that in Hyderabad they are calling this their semi-localities as poles or not, or maybe they have named it after Vada. One has to really look into the case of Hyderabad, even at Nizamapatnam, because you see, even you can find a similar kind of thing in Southeast Asia. Because say for example, in the Eastern Indian Ocean, when the Shah Bandar has to be elected, the people used to trust so much on Gujarati. The Shah Bandar in East Africa was actually appointed the Shah Bandar dealing with the Southeast Asian merchant here. And see now that he's going from the western coast of India, from Gujarat to East Africa, and from East Africa he's being called in Southeast Asia. And the role of the Muktasadi was very important. We are having references that who are the Muktasadis, and later on he's getting the designation of Shah. So the Persian sources has to reveal a lot.
So it was more of a globalization then.
Therefore, it was. So we are not in the nascent globalization period. The globalization has been there in antiquity. Baruch was the port. Yeah. Another French scholar, Michael, who would be coming, he is working on Baruch, right? On the early medieval aspect of the Baruch. So Baruch, before Surat is not the port, many more ports were there.